Hey world. Um, so today, right? Let's talk about today. Today was a whirlwind of emotions, a whirlwind of being overwhelmed. Um, this morning was great. Like the morning started out amazing, right? Like I can't imagine starting out in a better spot than I started out this morning. And as the day went on, it just got better and better. Um, you know, sometimes you just gotta be, right? And I've been told this for so long now that I forget about it at times, and it doesn't always make sense, and it doesn't always sound like the right answer. And just being is not easy by any stretch of the imagination, especially for someone like me. It's getting easier, but it's just goes against my nature, right? Like I'm an overthinker. I overanalyze everything. I break things down. I get to a point that I'm just I overwhelm myself almost, right? I get into that overanalyzing paralysis often. Um, there's days that start out bad. There's days that start out good. There's days that start out great, and there's days that just start out neutral. Um, Today was a good day. I mean, it really was good, right? Like I felt good this morning. I woke up, I did my routine, I did everything, and I I started out the day just happy, right? And just in a good mood and just where I wanted to be at that moment. And as the day went on, it got better and better. And I'll tell you, the craziest thing just fell into my lap today, right? Something I didn't expect. And so I'm going to get a little personal here. I mean, obviously, I have no issue with that, so I'm going to. Um, so for Christmas, my father got me Ancestry.com kit because it was some sale, and he's wanted me to look into this for years because I was adopted at birth. And I guess he always felt bad because my parents were, followed the way that they were raised, and their generation growing up in Brooklyn in the 50s, 60s was, secretive. You keep secrets. You kids don't need to know certain things. And to my parents' credit, they were always very honest about me being adopted and never hid that fact. They never pretended anything else, but there was facts that they never shared. Um, in the last, I'd say, year, um, as my father was getting older, he decided to tell me my biological mother's name. Um, and it was like dribs and drabs and little information here, little information there, which drives me nuts, right? And it puts me into a spot that I start overthinking, right? So that's my natural tendency is to go into that overthinking spot. Like, um, how do I handle this? How do I deal with this? How do I, okay, so now I have this information. And then on Christmas, gives me Ancestry.com kit, and how do I handle that information? And that's fine. And for the first time ever, I actually did it, right? Because he's wanted me to do it before, and I kept saying no. I didn't feel like I was ready. I didn't feel like it was the right time. Um, I didn't. I don't know. It was major unknown in my life, my whole life, right? Like I didn't know what the reaction was going to be. I didn't know what I was going to find on the other side. I told myself narratives my whole life about it, to try and give myself peace over it, um, because I never wanted to admit that I had an abandonment issue, or that I felt less than, or I didn't want to admit that might have been one of my shames, right? And as I'm doing the work I'm doing, and I'm evolving and growing and moving forward and progressing, I've always gotten more comfortable with the fact, and I've admitted it, and I've written it out, and I've did my routine of burning it right after I write it, because for me, I need that physical gone, right? That physical attachment to it is gone when I burn it. And for me, it's more therapeutic that way. Um, So a few weeks ago, I got a message from somebody on Ancestry.com saying we might be cousins, and I was kind of shocked at the time, right? It kind of put me into a shocked place, and I responded. I said, "Well, I was adopted on this date. This is my name. This is where I'm from, and I was born here." And it was like radio silence, right? Because I don't think people check Ancestry.com very often unless they're actively looking for something. So maybe when they're doing that, it's just one of those things. And I didn't think much of it. And then this morning at some time, I think it was, for some reason, I'm going to say 717 because that's just a number that sticks out in my head. Maybe it was 714, 717. I got a message and it said, "We had cousins down there and it's very possible." And I'm like, okay, that's interesting. I responded back with something. I don't even remember what I said, which is rare for me, but I don't. Um, Now, as my day's going, I'm going through my day and many things are coming up. I'm trying to get the kids to do schoolwork, trying to get them to settle down, trying to get everybody fed, trying to do all these different things. Couldn't get them signed in. Like, this whole teaching at home thing is not fun for anyone. And especially if you're a single parent trying to work, teach your kids, walk them through things. Like, I mean, it's a lot, right? Like, I mean, it was another added layer that I probably didn't need at this point, but that's fine. My kids need it. I'm going to do it. Um, it's not a matter of that I don't want to. It's not a matter of that I don't like it. It's a matter of I didn't need the extra layer, but it needs to get done, and I'm doing it. So that's really all that matters, and I'm doing the best I can with it. So I don't remember exact time. I'm going to say 11:15 ish, 11:20. I get a message from somebody saying on Facebook, right? Someone I'm not connected to. I think think I'm your sister, and there was a whole nother part of the message. So I get this message and I go into this shock mode, right? I screenshot it. I send it to a couple people, um, just because I'm trying to like get insight on what do I do, right? Like I'm at this point where I'm so emotional and I'm so like at that point I was just in shock. I was just in shock. And I think at that moment everybody was busy, right? So I didn't get a response right away and I just went with it, right? I went with my intuition, which said respond back, and I did. Um, and like I want to say within no time. I mean, we went from communicating through Messenger to getting on the phone and talking for over an hour. Then I had a call back to back to that. Now, during this time, I then get connection invites from my biological mother and my two biological aunts. Now, at this point, I'm getting like very overwhelmed, right? Because it's so, the conversation with my biological sister was amazing, right? And she really is an amazing human being. And I feel so special to know her right now, because there's so many similarities and there's so many, there's just so many missing pieces, right? So I'm going to complete telling the story, then I'm going to go back and fill in the why, right? Why this is important to me. And it's a huge part of my day. It's a huge part of my life, right? It's a huge part of where I'm at this moment. So I'm going to share as much as I can within a period of time because I have a conference call right after this. It was like during the conversation, it just felt right. Like my intuition, my empathic ways, everything about it just felt so right being on the call. And we just talked and talked. And it was this amazing conversation. This is your mother. This is, what happened. This is what we know. This is how it kind of went down. Um, and, you know, your, your, our mother would like to speak to you. And I got really held back by that, right? So I had my next call. I got off the phone with her because she had stuff to do and I had my next call lined up. I got on the next call, which ended up was not the best call in the world, which is fine because that happens also, right? Not every call is good. But while on that next call, and I'm having this conversation with this individual, I didn't fit for what they were looking for me to fit into, right? It was for podcasts, a few different ones, and I just didn't fit. And that's fine. I'm perfectly fine with that because not everybody's for everything, right? So it was at this moment, I'm sitting here thinking and overthinking, and I just didn't know what to do, right? Like, I called my dad. I said, "What do I do?" Like, and he's like, "Are you going to talk to her?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I want to, but I don't know." And it was this uncomfortable feeling, right? Not in a bad way, but in an unknown way. And I know with all the work that I'm doing, I need to be willing to be uncomfortable and take those steps. Um, so I did, and I called her. Now, granted, right, this is somebody who has never met me, um, gave birth to me. I'm now 41 years old, and we were both awkward. We were both kind of overwhelmed and overloaded, right? And she's telling me a little bit of stuff that, she knew eventually I would find her, and she knew eventually we would talk, and she knew eventually at some point I would see her and we would see each other. Um, and it was like I got a little bit more of the story, I got a little bit more information, and it I ended the call short, and I didn't end it because it was bad. I ended it because I didn't know how to handle it. And before I make my normal mistakes of saying something I don't want to say, saying something that would be inappropriate, acting a way that I don't want to act, and rather than just reacting, I decided to take a pause and I decided to take a step back. Now, that is not my norm, right? That is my new habits. And I paused and I spent some time with the kids and I did a few other things. And I spoke to my sister again for a short period, my biological sister again for a short period of time. And it was just, it, it was okay. So, and then more period went by and got the kids fed and got the kids dinner. And now they're all in bed, right? Because obviously I'm on here. So they're all in bed because if they weren't in bed, I definitely couldn't do stuff like this. Um, and I spoke to my biological sister again for another 2 hours. And it just seems so natural. And it seems like it's meant to be, right? And I think the only reason it's meant to be is because I'm doing the work. Because I'm 100% guaranteeing that if I was the person I was 3.5 months ago, I wouldn't have been able to handle this situation. I definitely would have not handled it correctly. I would have been overwhelmed and I would have expressed being overwhelmed in a negative habit that I formed my whole life. So there's something to be said about things happen when they're meant to, and you really can't fight those things. You can't you can't run from what's meant to be in any way, shape, or form, right? Like some things are just meant to be. And we can run, we can hide, we can abandon ourselves, we can push people away, we can walk away from companies, we can do all these different things that in turn harm ourselves in different ways, right? Like not always physical, not always emotional, not, but sometimes mental is enough, right? And as I look over the last few weeks of my life, I've made lots of decisions. They haven't always been right. They haven't been perfect. But I'm also owning it, right? And I'm also accepting it. And I'm forgiving myself and I'm having self-love and self-compassion and I'm giving myself the opportunity to make it better, right, wrong, or indifferent. And that's a big part of this, right? So now what I want to explain is a little bit of why today was like that, and a little bit of what today did for me. Because if you're not adopted, it doesn't make sense. So I want to share for people who are and share for people who aren't, right? Because if you're not adopted, you're not going to understand what it's like to be adopted. Um, it's a very unique experience. Being adopted, whether you realize it or not, no matter how hard your adoptive family, parents, whatever it is, right? They're the ones that raised you, so they're your parents. No matter how hard they try, no matter how much they love you, no matter how much they do right by you, you get this feeling that you don't fit in. You get this feeling that you're an outsider. You get this feeling that, you know, you don't belong. And it's not a them thing, it's a me thing, right? At least that's what it did for me. And I never acknowledged this. All therapy, all psychiatry, everything that I went through as a kid, no matter what it was, I always said, oh, I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with that. I mean, granted, that was probably the number one warning sign to anyone who spoke to me that it should have been an issue. Um, but maybe I manipulated the therapist or psychiatrist so much that they didn't, see it, right? Because I'm very good at twisting. I was very good at twisting and spinning things and turning it on them, because that's the life I led back then, right? You know, I was always too smart for my own good in lots of ways. Um, Looking at it today, and it's not a knock on anyone in my life, but for the first time in my life, I understood why I understood where I fit, and I understood what my role in that was, and I understood why I was different because I was different, right? Like, and it's slight differences, like the family that raised me, my parents, my sister, my aunts, my uncles, my cousins, a huge, enormous, loving family that always did their best, in every way possible. They weren't really empathic. They weren't spiritual. They, had their religions, they had their beliefs, but they were also ingrained into them. So, when I used to say things or I used to feel things or I used to try and express myself even at a young age, it was kind of shut down in a lot of ways, right? And it was only because of what they knew, right? What they knew best. Um, so I felt off. I felt out of it. Um, I just I always felt like I didn't belong, to no fault of theirs, but a fault of mine. And it just it didn't make sense to me until, very recently. I think I've talked about how I felt at different times. Um, it's not really tangible. It was always a hole missing, right? It was a gap within me. It was something that I didn't know how to fill, and I don't think there was a way to fill. And I didn't I didn't understand how to fill it until today, when it naturally did it on its own. As I'm doing this work, things fall in place one way or another. And as I'm looking at this and understanding this, it it's not that I want to replace the family I have or that raised me in any way, shape, or form, because I love them, right? They've been my whole life. And, that's who I was raised by and with and, had my trials and tribulations with. And they stuck by me through everything. And God knows I did a lot wrong. Um, but they were always there, and they're still there, and they're still encouraging me, which is pretty amazing. Um, so, but what it is my family extended in a way, right? And it grew, and there's an extension now, and it's a place that I can go and feel whole, um, for myself, right? That because now I know the pieces that were missing, and I can fill those gaps in a little on my own. And it just makes more sense now. There's something to be said about being on the outside looking in a lot of times, as you're growing up and as you feel that emptiness and you don't know how to express it or explain it. And you look for your outlets no matter what they are. For me, it was drugs. Then after drugs, it was numbness, right? Because I just never felt. And that's the only way I knew how to fill those things, right? And it could be anything. It could be any addiction, whether it's an addiction to attention, whether it's an addiction to sex, whether it's an addiction to gambling, whether it's an addiction to drugs, whether it's an addiction to um, being needed, right? Because that was always part of my thing too, right? I always wanted to feel needed. I always wanted to feel validated from the outside looking in. And sometimes in life, it's not that easy, right? Like you could fill that void for a period of time and it will work. Um, and what you'll find yourself doing over time, and what I've noticed from doing this work is if you don't fill the void with something healthy, it's eventually going to be something that drowns you and suffocates you. Or suffocates, maybe not drown and suffocate, because that would be kind of, well, I guess not. I guess it's the same concept. Um, but there's something bigger here, right? And I think this people can relate to. When you have a void and you don't know how to fill it, you will create something to fill it. No matter who you are, no matter how perfect or how great it is in your life, that hole doesn't get filled unless you find a healthy way to fill it. Because the negative ways to fill it just get more and more of a obsession needed fill, right? And that would be Thomas. Apparently, I need to explain to him what quiet means, but that's fine. Um, this what I learned today was sometimes you just have to go with it because when you're fighting something for so long and you're not acknowledging something for so long, usually that means that's the issue, right? When you're in a pattern and you're in a routine, that's an unhealthy action for you, no matter what it is. Like me, it's avoiding, right? Like that's always been my biggest thing. And then I abandon myself, and then I do this, and then I do that, right? There's a whole bunch of triggers there, and there's a whole bunch of ways that I do so. Um, if you're always filling it with a negative, it's eventually gonna just drown you out. And I'm a pretty amazing person when I give myself a chance. And I'm very happy with myself and I love myself. And I'm starting to fill it with happiness and love and my feeling of knowing where I came from, right? Because that's a big one, right? That's huge. And it's so hard to understand for somebody who's not adopted or not a foster kid or something in that circumstance. Because when you don't know where you come from, and it's nothing personal against anybody or any decisions, right? Because there's many worse outcomes than not being or being adopted, right? You can grow up in a situation that's horrendous. You can be brought into a world that is a very toxic, horrible situation. So at the end of the day, you accept it for what it is. You find that way to fill that void, and maybe and you're not always going to get the answers you want. You're not always going to meet the people you want, right? I mean, I got a warm welcome beyond belief today, and it was the most amazing feeling. But I don't think I would have had the same welcome where I was 10 years ago because I wasn't ready for it. I definitely wouldn't have reacted the same way. I definitely wouldn't have handled it appropriately. And I definitely wouldn't have been able to process it right. And because of the tools that I'm learning now, I'm able to process. I'm able to understand. I'm able to pause, take a break, and just think and just be. And for me, that's enormous. It's this is so powerful, and I don't know how to express it to people who want to go on a journey, who want to endeavor on this mission, who want to take that chance, and are willing to confront it by any measures necessary. But if you are, I would definitely encourage you to do it and make sure you see your way through it, because last time I didn't. Um, because the reward is finding yourself. And if you find yourself, nobody can ever take that away from you. It's easy to say that, somebody had power over you. It's easy to say that, somebody controlled situations. It's easy to say that I'm the victim. The reality was I was a victim to myself. I allowed people to do that to me. And that was because of my own insecurities and everything else. And today I'm not that person anymore. And I'm not where I'm going yet, but I'm where I'm at today, and I'm pretty damn happy with that. You know, I love who I am today. I am excited to be where I am today. I am fulfilled with myself. I am happy for myself, and I love myself today. And anybody who even knew me a month ago, month and a half ago, would say this isn't possible because this isn't you, right? You're just in this space, right? What's going on that you're in this mood? 3 months ago when I started doing the work, and then a month and a half ago when I started doing more work, and then couple weeks ago when I started doing deeper work. Um, it's a combination of everything. It's the combination of working on physical. It's the combination of mental. It's a combination of emotional. It's because I'm willing to work on it all is the only reason I am where I am today. And this is just the beginning of my journey. This is just the beginning of my life. I am 41 years old, right? Now, granted, I didn't live a very healthy life for the first 41 years. But if where I'm going and I live healthy for the next period of time, there's a good chance that by then people will be living to 100, 105, 110, right? So maybe I get to 90, 95. And if that's the case, I'm not even halfway done. So who cares, right? Who cares that the first 41 years? So if I made the first 41 years my lessons and my learning, and I'm not even halfway done, shit, I'm ahead of the game. Like, I'm on my way because I have so much left to do and so much left to live and so much happiness to bring to myself, my kids, those around me, and everyone that I can impact. Um, and it will be coming from a different place because I'll be full of it for myself, which is something I've never said. And I'm just excited. I'm excited about everything in front of me. Things are starting to fall in place because I'm not fighting the trend anymore. Um, for whoever's watching, I appreciate you. I'm sure somebody might watch later, maybe not, but I love you all and thank you very much for watching my journey. And if you have any questions, always feel free to reach out. Thank you and have a good one.